Welcome to another episode of UMass Sports Weekly. I'm your host, Casey Johnson. Got a great show lined up for you tonight. Going to start it out with an in-depth look at the past week's NFL games, along with some fantasy points that got affected. Follow that up with a look at MLB, also with the playoffs, Red Sox coming up. A lot of the stuff going on there. And we'll finish it off with our very own Jesse Mayfield Sheehan, JMS, to talk some UMass athletics. Stay tuned for UMass Sports Weekly.
This is UMass Sports Weekly.
Welcome back. Now joining me at the table to discuss a little NFL is Chris Potomatis, Chris Corso, and Joey Sade. Guys, thanks for joining me. Getting into the NFL season here. It's been an exciting one so far. And main topic that a lot of people are talking about are the 0-3 teams. Now, we usually expect some 0-3 teams to be there early in the season. That happens, but not the names that we've been hearing this year. The Redskins, Giants, and Steelers. All three teams that if you said they'd be 0-3 before the season started, I think it's fair to say a lot of people would call you crazy. All three of them to be 0-3. But we're seeing that so far this year, and it's been pretty surprising. Now, we know that no 0-3 team has ever made the playoffs. Never happened. And these are all three teams that think they're playoff teams. So, Chris, I'm going to start it with you. Out of these teams, do you think any of them have a chance to go on and make the playoffs?
I think Pittsburgh has a chance to make the playoffs. When you look at who they have at quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, he's a guy that has postseason experience. He's been in the tough games, and he knows how to play well when it matters the most. And when you look at Pittsburgh, they have 3 losses, Tennessee 16-9. So again, a one-score game that can go either way. The game at Cincinnati was a 10-point loss, but still a very close game. In Chicago, 5 turnovers. So if they can, limit those turnovers, they're in that game probably until the fourth quarter. So I think with all that stuff kind of being wrapped in, I think they do have a chance to get back into this thing. Their defense looks okay. It's not the Pittsburgh defense that we're used to seeing, but I think that they're good. They're getting Le'Veon Bell back next week, who's their rookie running back. That'll be a huge boost for them. I think overall they do have a chance to get back in this. I don't think there's a stellar team at AFC North, so I think they do have a chance to climb back in here.
Chris, you got any teams that you think can make it?
Well, I think all these teams are in a lot of trouble, especially the Steelers. They have a ton of injuries, and they're just getting old, as you can see. And the Redskins have the injury of RG3 coming back from the torn ACL. He's definitely not as mobile as he used to be. So I think that the Giants have the best chance. They have a lot of problems. Their running game is a total mess right now. David Wilson has not been what they expected, and they picked up Brandon Jacobs, and he has had no effect on the rushing offense. They have under 150 rushing yards as a team so far in the first 3 games this season. So they're definitely struggling, but I think this team has the best chance. You have Eli Manning, 2-time Super Bowl quarterback. He's a champion. We've seen him do it. We've seen him do it in the fourth quarter. He's got stud wide receivers in Victor Cruz, who he connected with 3 touchdowns in week 2. And then he's got Akeem Nicks, who it's really been a problem. Akeem Nicks came out in the media and said, I can't throw the ball to myself. So he was only targeted once last week in the 38-0 loss that the Giants had against the Carolina Panthers. So Eli's got to find a way to get Nicks involved and Cruz. And if they get the running game going, I know David Wilson has that potential. We saw it last year at the end of the season. So I think if the defense gets going again, you got studs all over that defense, Justin Tuck being the leader. I think this team has the most potential to come back compared to the other 2 teams, but all these teams are in trouble, Casey. You can see it. All the teams, they kind of look dead right now.
Yeah, all the pieces are there for the Giants to make a playoff team, but they are just not putting it together so far.
Not putting it together yet.
Joey, what about yourself? Don't tell me you're taking the Redskins.
Casey, I'm taking the Redskins. I'm taking the other team in the Giants division. One, because when you look at the Redskins, that team starts and ends with, Robert Griffin III. Coming into the season, as long as Robert Griffin III was healthy, this Redskins team had high expectations considering the way they played last year, like exiting the playoffs. He was a rookie quarterback. He led them to almost a playoff win if he didn't get injured in that game. And let's not forget that RG3 is coming off ACL surgery. This guy is not a machine. People compare his injury to what Adrian Peterson came off of 2 years ago, when last year he came back and rushed for 2,000 yards. And people want to look to that and say, well, if Adrian Peterson can do that, why can't Robert Griffin III? everybody's different. Everybody recovers from injuries different. They're two different players. They play two different positions, running back and quarterback. So I think that RG3 is going to get it. His offense hasn't been that bad. He's put up 20 points in each of the 3 games. I think their defense is what's specifically been lacking. They rank 31st right now in both rushing and passing opponents' yards, and that's only going to get better considering their defense was pretty good last year. It helped them throughout. And I think their offense is still loaded. They got Santana Moss, Pierre Garçon. They have Alfred Morris, who's a stud running back who's only going to get better because, he was a rookie last year as well. So I think that they're in a division where, the Cowboys are 2-1, the Eagles are only 1-2, and, the Giants are 0-3. So there's nobody in the division that's running away with that crown. Mm-hmm. I still think, as Chris said, any team that starts 0-3, it's going to be really difficult to come back, regardless of what circumstances and regardless of the talent you have on your team, based on the fact that the NFL in general, it's a parity league. Every team, every year there's a team that comes out of nowhere. So for them, I think to make the playoffs, they'll have to make the wild card. They'll have to get in that position. And I think that as long as RG3 gets back on track, recovers like he should, upcoming games, he's going to get better. He's not going to play as he did the past 3 games. And I think that they will get better.
Maybe see a nice wild card battle between the Giants and the Redskins come the end of the
season.
That'd be
great. And keep in mind that division is very weak. You could probably go 7-9 and maybe sneak into the playoffs in that division.
That's true. So we'll see how it plays out. It's not really quite over for them yet. We'll see what happens. Now, as this year progresses, we've been seeing some really great performances. Peyton Manning's the one to go to. It's been unreal so far. He's on pace for some ridiculous numbers. But we've seen some low-key performances as well and some sleepers performing. So I want to get your guys' take on maybe some sleepers, especially with matchups. Joey, I'm going to start with you coming up in Week 4. Who's your player to watch for fantasy in Week 4?
My player to watch, Casey, is going to stem off of last week's performance in Kimbrell Tompkins for the Patriots. One, because those first 2 games, him and Aaron Dobson they're both rookie wide receivers playing in a very difficult Patriots offense with Tom Brady running that offense. So I think that they were destined to struggle beginning. First of all, they're rookies. They're entering a difficult offense. And they were asked to carry a load left by Wes Welker and Deion Branch and Brandon Lloyd and, Rob Gronkowski was not there and Aaron Hernandez. Those 2 guys, along with Julian Edelman now since Amendola's hurt, Kimbrell Tompkins was asked to carry a pretty hefty load for a rookie, especially entering one of those offensive schemes, which is very difficult to, transpire and cover. So I think that in this past Week 3, Tom Brady connected with Tompkins for 2 touchdowns. He got a little confident with the rookie, and I think moving forward, if Tompkins gets hot, Brady's going to find him. And right now, I think Tompkins, right behind Julian Edelman, is probably their number 2 receiver, right now with Amendola and Gronkowski hurt. So as long as he can get open and use his speed and, get the catches that he's been making, 2 touchdowns last week, he's going to be a favorite for Brady. And, we saw Wes Welker when he's a favorite for Brady. If he gets hot, they're going to pick up some fantasy points.
Yeah, we see him. He's getting the targets. Brady's looking for him, so
he's got to catch him.
A couple drop passes. They were making those personalized jerseys that said Drobson and Drobkins.
You know what? He could use a game like his past game.
Yeah, he just
against the Tampa. He just needs that confidence.
Yeah, he needs a nice confidence builder. A few short slants that gets him 100 yards, but he'll come around with Brady looking for him. Chris, why don't you give us someone to watch?
Well, my guy to watch had a big week last week. He exploded, and that's DeMarco Murray, the running back for the Dallas Cowboys. 175 yards against the St. Louis Rams. He had a touchdown, and he also had 30 yards receiving with 3 receptions. So this is a guy who he's kind of struggled the first 2 weeks, but he always gets receptions. He always gets the carries. He had a little bit of a hard time in week 2. He only rushed for 26 yards, but he had 8 receptions. And in those PPR leagues, when you get those receptions, those are all points when it comes to fantasy. So he's definitely getting the targets, definitely getting the rushes. He had a career-high 26 carries last week in the big game that he had. And I think he's going to be a guy to watch going forward. In some of your leagues, in those deep leagues, you can pick him up. You never know. He could be there. But he's one of those guys that if you're struggling with that second running back spot, he's the guy that can slip in there. I know myself, I had David Wilson as my expected second running back, and he's not cutting it. So DeMarco Murray came in last week and had a big week, and he's the reason why I won. So DeMarco Murray, watch out for him. He's got a big upside for fantasy teams this year.
Yeah, something about him in that St. Louis defense. He had 238 yards against them last year. Maybe it would have been a good pick for last week's player to watch, but, that was a good performance by him there. Chris, why don't you give us one?
My guy is Antonio Brown's wide receiver from the Pittsburgh Steelers. First 2 weeks, kind of quiet, and actually complained about it. Similar to what other players said. I can't with the Keem Nicks, I can't toss the ball to myself. He kind of said that, and last week against the Bears, one of the best defenses in the league, 9 catches and 196 yards. Now, they only scored 23 points that game. If they didn't have 5 turnovers, maybe he gets even more catches. He's a guy now, I think, Roethlisberger's going to look towards him. This offense has to figure it out. I mean, this defense isn't what it used to be. They have to start being able to score more points, and Antonio Brown's going to be a huge part of that. He can go deep, he can catch the short passes, and everywhere in between. So if he can have this week, he's going up against Minnesota, who's not nearly as good defensively as Chicago is. So I think he's a guy I would definitely start and expect big things out of.
Yeah, he's definitely a key guy to getting them out of that 0-3 hole, because that's the guy Roethlisberger is looking to right now. He's his number one guy. We'll see how it plays out for him. Now, we want to take a look at the AFC East. It's a popular division around these parts. We got Pats fans, we got Jets fans. Actually, at the table, we got both of them. We have Pats fans in Joey and Crispy, and we got a Jet fan here in Chris Corso. So we just want to talk about a little bit, see what you guys getting takes on their season so far. Pats are 3-0, but they're not playing like a 3-0 team necessarily. They've had some pretty easy opponents. And the Jets got a whole new team there with Geno. I'll start you off, because that's a little more of a story there. What are you thinking of this new Jets team built around Geno Smith?
Well, when you talk about the Jets, Geno Smith is doing everything he can do to give them a chance to win, and that's all you ask from a rookie quarterback. He has 3 touchdowns this year, 1 rushing touchdown last week, 800 yards. So he's really doing exactly what they need. He's not doing more than you expect. He's a rookie quarterback. He has 6 interceptions this year, but he's doing what needs to be done to get wins. And get in the first week, he led them on that drive, which got them the game-winning field goal. And every week, he's just getting them in position to win. And I think this Jets team this year relies on the defense. It's Rex Ryan's defense, and they've done a great job on defense this year. That's the main highlight so far, is the defensive line led by Muhammad Wilkerson. He's really stepped out as a star this year. He has a couple sacks, and he's really been the leader of that defensive line. So to see this team, they have the 3rd best defense so far in the first 3 weeks, yards per game-wise, only giving up 270 yards per game. So it's been the Jets' defense that's really been the key so far. And if Geno can keep improving and be a little bit better than Sanchez would be, that's all we can ask as Jets fans.
It's not much to ask.
But last week against the Bills, they had 542 total yards. That's the most that the Jets have had since Rex Ryan has been coach. So you saw a flea flicker play. You saw deep balls thrown by Geno Smith to Holmes and Hill. So Marty Morningwood, in his first year as the offensive coordinator, is really stretching the offensive game plan of the Jets, and I'm really liking it. And to see Geno stretching out, throwing the ball deep, and then you hand the ball off to Bilal Powell, who's been picking it up. He had 126 rushing yards last game. Then you got Chris Ivory to help him out in the rushing game. This team, this offense has really surprised a lot of people this year, because they entered the season as the joke of the league. Rex Ryan is the joke coach of the league. But they started off 2-1. They played the Patriots tough. And I'm surprised as a fan, and as a reporter, I'm surprised as well. They've really put up the numbers to back it up, and they could have a chance in this division this year. The Patriots offense doesn't look as strong. The Miami Dolphins look real good at 3-0, but I could see the Jets maybe squeaking in a wild card spot. You never know. I think they may have a shot to squeak into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, it's looking like one of those new explosive offenses we're really seeing in the Kaepernicks and in the Russell Wilsons. Now you got Geno Smith coming in for the Jets. I mean, I'm sure that's all you guys are praying for, is an offense like that. Now, Patriots, we're a little greedy. We're used to success. We're used to winning. We're 3-0. We're not happy. That's Patriots way. What do you guys think? Bounce it off both of you, Chris. You can start it off. What do you guys think of this Patriots team right now?
I mean, I think as far as the first 3 weeks of the season go, I mean, I don't know how much more you really could honestly expect to see, especially out of the defense. I mean, this defense gave up 3 points last week. I can't think of the last time that they held an opposing team to single digits. I mean, seemingly it was like if they hold them up to under 25, it was a good game. But then you see, against the Jets, they held them to 10 points against The Bucks last week, 3 points. I mean, I think this defense is legit. You look at this, the defensive backs that we have. Alfonso Denner looks good. Arrington, he's forcing turnovers. Akeem Talib looks like an number one corner. They aren't giving up those huge plays that would just break their backs. Like, the last couple of seasons, they're pretty strong, and especially their front seven looks very good right now. I mean, Chandler Jones getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks sacking him. Tommy Kelly has looked very good from D and Jerry Will. I think that's a sneaky pickup because you put him next to Vince Wilfork, who basically demands a double team. You can get a single team on Tommy Kelly. I think that's huge for this team. And Rob Ninkovich, who just got a 3-year contract extension, he's looked great as well. Offensively, I don't think anyone thought that they would be putting up 35 points a game, especially Bill Gronkowski and Noah Amendola. You have 2 rookies and a guy who used to play quarterback in college, basically, as Tom Brady's receiving core. That's not going to result to a ton of points. And this year, I think the biggest thing is progress from weeks 1 through week 17. I think we're seeing that so far. We're seeing more catches by Dobson, more catches by Tompkins, and certainly more targets for them. And I think as the year goes on, you'll see more and more of that. And maybe they'll start scoring in low 20s and advance to the 30s. But right now, 3-0 is 3-0, and like you said, there's some teams in town that are 0-3. So for the Pats to be 3-0, I think that's a huge step in the right direction.
Joe, what are you seeing from the Pats?
When me and Chris were talking earlier about the Patriots, one number that stuck out to us was 34, and that's the total amount of points they've given up in 3 weeks. And that, if you told me they did that last year, I'd think you're crazy. There's no way they give up 34 points. They used to give that up in 1 game. So, their defense is starting off really strong. The past couple of seasons, we've seen their defense start off slow and progressively get better as the season goes on. This year, I think it's encouraging that they're showing that right off the bat, they're right there. They're in the top in the passer rating, passing rating, defense, and passer yards for percentage defense. So they're right there in the league. As we're only 3 weeks in, but I think the fact that their defense has started off strong is great.
Now, do you think those numbers are accurate to the skill level of this defense, or do you think you can attribute some of those numbers to the fact that they really haven't played a good team yet?
You can make the case for both sides. They play the Jets, and the Bills and the Bucks. Those are 2 rookie quarterbacks and a 3rd-year quarterback, so they haven't faced those Matt Ryans or Drew Brees, which they will face in the upcoming weeks. So we'll see how their defense stacks up against that. But you see, Akeem Talib has 3 interceptions. He's the real deal. We saw that last year. When he came onto this defense, he made a big difference. And when he went out in that playoff game against Baltimore, you could see how much of a step back their defense took. And I think Alfonso Denner also was making a big difference as well. You're getting Vince Wilfork. He's manning up in the front, stopping that running offense. So I think that their defense is coming together. It's taken a little while, 3 or 4 years now, but I think it's finally clicking. And going back to the offense, like Chris said, this is probably the lowest point of the offense we'll see all season. There's no Gronkowski, there's no Amendola, and they started off with 2 rookie quarterbacks. And Tom Brady's got to eventually get it. So I think we look forward. Will they progress as the season goes on? Probably. And I think that's scary for the league.
I love that you mentioned Tommy Kelly, too. He's having a good year with Wilfork. Wilfork's not getting a lot of credit, but he's having a good year. Guys, thanks for joining me. Stay tuned. We'll be right back to talk a little MLB.
Men were still looking to get their first win of the season. UMass came out aggressively in this contest and got a lot of good chances to score in the first half, outshooting Fairfield 11-7. But ultimately, neither team could find the back of the net, and the first half ended scoreless. Early in the second half, Daniel Shaw passes it ahead to Rico McLaren, who dribbles it around defender Matt Keys and beats goalkeeper Nick Ruiz to give Fairfield the first goal of the game. The matchup was an intense one, as a total of 4 yellow cards were handed out throughout the contest, 1 to UMass's Josh Jess, and 1 to Fairfield's John Clements, Jake Zuniga, and Jordan Aris. Later in the second half, McLaren steals a pass from Danny Belza and passes it over to Martin Lindgren, who puts it in the net for the Stags, giving them an insurance goal and sealing the win for Fairfield. Fairfield got its second win of the season by a final score of 2-0. After the game, UMass coach Sam Koch talked about the team's struggles in the second half.
If I knew the answer, I'd be making a lot of money. The game changed when they scored, and when you're 0-5, 0-6, those kind of things just take the wind out of your sails. But I thought after a while, we got back at them. You know, the first part, before they scored, we had it down their end. I think most of the, if not the whole time. So, I mean, we were doing good things today, but we just couldn't buy a goal. And I don't know if there's some kind of magnetic field that we don't know about, or there's some kind of Zulu, you know, witch doctor behind there. I mean, I really don't know. Something's not right.
Welcome back to UMass Sports Weekly. Now joining me at the table to talk a little MLB is Jess Levinson, Mark the Shark Daly, and Caitlin Boyer. Guys, thanks for joining me. Now, talking MLB, got to touch on the Red Sox. Not much to talk about right now because they're in the playoffs. They're the best team in the MLB. They're looking really strong. But we want to touch on some possibilities as they get into the playoffs here. Now, there's a couple teams that they could face. Their matchups aren't for sure yet, but we know there's some good matchups we'd like them to see. Caitlin, I'm going to start with you. Who would you like to see the Sox face in the playoffs?
I would have to say the Indians. I think that, honestly, it's been a big change for the Red Sox. Last year we went from quite a negative season to now them being in first place. So, you know, the Red Sox are up there. They're doing well. So we'll see what happens come October.
The Red Sox this year, Caitlin, are 6-1 against the Indians. Actually, Justin Masterson, former Red Sox, he's hurt right now. He had an oblique injury. He's their ace, so he's going to be relegated to the bullpen. He's going to be the weak part of their rotation, actually. So they're very hurt right now.
That's good to hear that, you know, their ace is out and a possible matchup. That's something when it comes to the playoffs you definitely want to see. Mark, who you got?
Well, I think I'd love to see them play Tampa just because of the experience that they've had with Tampa being in the AL East. When Masterson does come back for the Indians, I think there's going to be a lot of questions. I know they're going to start him off. They're looking to start him tomorrow night. Francona wants to have him in the bullpen, but there's a lot of questions that remain with him as far as that goes. But I think going forward, once we hit the playoffs, we have the wild card game. Will be Monday. Right now, it looks like we still a lot of things can pan out. A lot of things can happen. But it looks like right now we're going to have Tampa Bay versus Cleveland in Tampa on Monday for the wild card play-in game. And I think the fact that Tampa's going to have to, because it's a winner-go-home game or winner-stay-home game. In Tampa's case, the game right now, Tampa will be hosting the Indians. If it was to start today, that's how it would pan out. And I think Tampa have to use their best pitcher in David Price to begin on Monday just to get into the playoffs. So their bullpen, their rotation, when the Red Sox face them possibly next Tuesday, either way, whether we play Tampa or we play Cleveland, their number one ace is already going to be used, and they won't be able to come back and pitch until at least Game 5 if the series goes 5 in the first round. So I think that's a great advantage for the Red Sox. And the Red Sox have the experience. They've played Tampa 15 to 20 times this year. They've had success against them, and they know what Joe Maddon's going to throw at them. They know what to expect from their roster. One of the other questions is Tampa has always had young guys, and whether or not they have the experience to come into the playoffs, to be depended on in the playoffs, is a big thing that we'll have to find out how it happens and if it works for Tampa or not. For veteran-wise, you have Longoria. He's always been there. But you have guys like Will Myers, their new pretty much future. And he hasn't been playing well lately, and whether that pans out, whether it turns up in the playoffs or not, is a big question mark. So if I was the Red Sox, I'd rather play them going forward, and we'll see what happens.
Now, if we're going up against them and you're thinking David Price gets wasted in that one-game playoff, how do you think the Red Sox match up their pitching? Do you think they stay with the rotation as they want to go, their second guy against Ray's second guy, or do you think they go for matchups?
Well, I think they're going to go for matchups. I mean, we look at they've already started moving their rotation around. They moved Ryan Dempster to the bullpen. They said he'll be there for the rest of the season, including playoffs. So we know he'll be coming in probably as a long reliever kind of role if necessary, or they'll throw him in like 6th or 7th inning if one of their starters throws a bunch of pitches to begin the game and can't. If he gets up near his maximum, they'll put Dempster in. I kind of have a feeling Felix Dubront's done. Definitely as a starter. We could also see him in relief, but they're probably going to sit him just because of his lack of experience in the playoffs. You got Jake Peavy, you got John Lester. Clay Buchholz is pitching pretty well. I mean, he did pick up his first loss of the season this past week, but he's still an ace. And then John Lackey would be probably their fourth guy, and they're probably going to go with a four-man rotation, especially in the first round, where they only need to win 3 games. They're probably going to go with just a four-man rotation. I think they're going to go matchups, though. I don't see what they're going to probably pitch. I'd imagine Lester or Buchholz go game 1 against Tampa or Cleveland's second starter in the rotation, and then that way you're going to have the advantage in the matchup. So it'll be interesting.
Now, Jess, you mentioned that on the Indians, excuse me, Masterson, their ace, is injured. And then along with this game, if they are to win it, then their second pitcher is now not starting. What do you think the Red Sox do in a situation like that where they're basically facing a few nobodies to start the series off?
Well, I think that they would still want to start their best players because it's the playoffs. They haven't been in the playoffs in 4 years. You need to make a statement right away. Farrell's a new manager. I don't think he would want to mess around too much with how things are going right now.
It's worked. I mean, it's exactly it. Yep. They're going to go with what's worked, and they're not going to go around changing things now, I don't think.
A very good stat that I read was the Red Sox haven't lost more than 3 straight games this year, so everyone's been pretty consistent.
Yeah, that's a good stat to know, definitely, especially when you go into the playoffs and these short game series start to come about. Caitlin, now with the pitching, do you think the pitching will remain the same?
I want to say the pitching will remain the same. I mean, I think that, as Mark said, you have Buchholz, you have Lester. Lester's Lester. So I think that it's going to remain consistent, and, we'll see what happens. But I do think the pitching will remain the way it's been.
Yeah, it's been strong. Don't fix it if it's not broken, right? Well, now with these teams getting in the playoffs, I'll just go right at it. Jess, I'm going to start with you. We'll go down the line. Who's your favorite to win the World Series?
Red Sox are my favorite to win the World Series, Casey, because...
Favorite team or best team, best chances?
The Red Sox have not lost more than 3 straight games this year. That means that they do not give up. They're a great team. They're all in this together. Everyone's been pretty consistent second half. First half, too. It's just been a great ride to follow.
Mark, who you got?
Well, I mean, I'd love to see the Sox win, and I think they're definitely my favorite for the American League. But you also got to look what's coming out of the NL Central. Right now, we got 3 teams that have all clinched the playoffs from the NL Central. So you got 2 wild card teams, and right now, St. Louis, they own the spot. And I think the Cardinals have had the success in the past. They just find a way to win, and I think that's going to be something. They're going to be my team to go with to the playoffs. Because they always, for some reason or another, they always just do really well.
Caitlin,
I think
who you got?
I would have said the Yankees if we didn't have a season like this. But I'm actually going to have to go with the Dodgers. I think that they have a really good bullpen. I know Clayton Kershaw has been in there. He has a pretty good ERA. So I'm pretty impressed with that going on. They also have Adrian Gonzalez at first base. I think he's hitting about 300. So I'm going to go with the Dodgers. Out in the West Coast. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, they've been the best team out in the West, so I mean that's a safe pick there. Dodgers, Red Sox is a matchup we're hearing float around a bit, and it'd be a good one to watch. So just the other day, we saw a little post-game celebration, the pool jumping. Now, it's getting some backlash. It's getting a lot of love as well. It's getting a lot of mixed opinions. Jess, I'll start with you. What's your opinion on post-game celebrations such as this? Do you think it's going too far? Do you think it's fair because it's sport, it's game?
I think it really depends on the team. You take on the personality of how things are going, your manager, the town. But they're professional baseball players as long as they don't take it too far. They don't mess around with the fans too much. I think if you're responsible, you have a good time, then it's all fun.
Yeah, I think keeping the fans out of it's definitely key. Mark, what do you think?
Well, I think you got to remember all these players. They go out on the field and they are representing the team that they play for. They're representing the city. And for a lot of these players, I mean, as we saw with the Red Sox, they're representing their families. Their families are out on the field too. And you got to remember, you got to act a certain way. And in certain instances, as we saw with the Red Sox, as reports coming out with what exactly happened with the Dodgers today or yesterday, reports came out that these grown men were urinated in the pools in Arizona. And, I mean, it's one thing to jump in the pool and celebrate, but are you doing that too? And that's too far. That's crossing that line. So I think with something like that, or when you see Johnny Gomes punting Bud Lights into the stands, it's funny, but you gotta keep in mind that you have millions of fans watching at home, and more kids more than anything, and they're role models to these kids, and I think that's when the line becomes crossed, is what you do when you know kids are watching.
Yeah, I don't want to push the lines of disrespect, basically, especially towards the fans or another team.
Yeah.
Pretty much anything when you're in a professional setting like that. Caitlin, what's your take on it?
I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, they work hard all year. This is their life. They want to win. Everyone wants to win. But I do think that they have to keep it, classy. They can't do it distastefully. And they have to remember that these are grown men. They're not young boys. This is not Little League, And as Mark said, they're role models. And they have a lot of people watching. And they need to remember that, they need to act their age. The urinating in the pools took it a bit too far. But I understand it's exciting. We've all had that experience of having that good win as athletes, and sometimes the win just takes over. So I guess
really
they can
took
act
over
in
Took over
extreme
their bladders.
ways.
Yeah, it took over their bladders a little bit, but it was fun to watch. It was not something you see every day with celebrations, so maybe save the celebrations to the champagne in the clubhouse. Hopefully we'll be seeing a lot of that from the Red Sox in the playoffs. Guys, thanks for joining me. Stay tuned. We'll be right back to talk a little UMass athletics with JMS. Oh, yeah.
Hosted the Hofstra Pride at Garber Field Sunday afternoon. The Minutewomen were hoping to bounce back after a devastating 4-1 loss against UConn on Wednesday. 10 minutes into the game, and Brooke Sabia puts a penalty corner shot into the net to put UMass on the board. The goal was Sabia's 10th on the season. 9 minutes later, and Hannah Prince takes a penalty corner shot that is deflected in by Lauren Ali Muhammad, giving the Minutewomen a 2-0 lead over Hofstra. The UMass defense was in shutdown mode in the first half, not allowing Hofstra to take a single shot through the first period. In the second half, the Minutewomen continued the attack as Ali Sabia's shot is blocked, but then Lindsay Bowman picks up the rebound, passes it back to Sabia, and Sabia puts it in the net for her first goal of the season to give UMass a 3-0 lead. Just 4 minutes later, and Allie's twin sister Brooke steps up and scores her second goal of the game on a give-and-go play with Molly McDonnell to give the Minutewomen a commanding 4-0 lead. 5 minutes left, and Marta Penas launches a pass into the attack circle, which is deflected in by Stella Schoen to put Hofstra on the board. But the Minutewomen struck back in the final minute, with a penalty corner play turning into freshman Charlotte Verelst getting her first goal of the season and giving UMass a 5-1 victory over Hofstra. After the game, Brooke Sabia talked about what it was like to bounce back and get the win after losing to UConn.
I thought it was really great. It's hard going and losing to teams like Syracuse and UConn and not having very many shots on goal, and just bouncing back from this and taking the shots that we can, not only doing that, but executing them. It's just a great feeling and boosts our confidence a lot.
UMass Sports Weekly. Now joining me at the table to talk a little UMass athletics is our very own Jesse Mayfield-Sheehan, JMS. Thanks for joining us. Now, throughout the night as you've been watching, as we cut into commercials, you've been seeing some packages. Those have been put together by Jesse right here. Jesse, we thank you for those. Some great coverage. That's always useful. Most recent one you saw was the field hockey team. Glad that was most recent coming into this because we want to start it off on a positive note. We don't want to bring our viewers down. So field hockey team's looking good. Why don't you cover what we saw in the package real quick, and then give us a little insight into their weekend coming up against number 2 Maryland and UNH.
All right, well, what you just saw was the field hockey's most recent game against Hofstra. Obviously, you saw the final score was 5-1 in favor of UMass. And I think that was an important game for them, as was mentioned by Brooke Sabia in the post-game interview, as they were coming off a tough loss against UConn, a 4-1 loss, and really just nothing went right for them in that particular game on Wednesday at Connecticut. And, you didn't even have to be there to see they got outshot, outpaced, out just about everything. And the final score was a loss of 4-1. And then this game against Hofstra, weren't playing quite as strong a team, and they really just got to go out there and take care of business and dominate in just about every aspect of the game, which I think was good for the team to do. So I think it was really good for the team, and now they get to, as they go ahead for 2 additional games on the weekend. And as for those 2 games, UNH, not the strongest team, a regional rival, but they're currently 3-4 on the season. They have the potential to be a tough opponent because, any team can beat any team on any given yada yada. But I've spoken to Coach Tagliente and some of the players, and they've really said, we are a better team than UNH. We just have to go out there and play our game, and if we play it right, then we should be winning this game. As for number 2, Maryland, that is where the real challenge lies for this weekend. This is a team that is the top scoring team in the nation right now. They are undefeated thus far, so that is going to present a real challenge for the Minutewomen, especially, considering that aside from an early win over, Michigan team that at the time was higher ranked than UMass, but since has sort of dropped off the rankings and hasn't had the greatest season. Aside from that one game, UMass has not defeated a team that is higher ranked than them. Granted, that's kind of hard when you're ranked 7th in the nation.
It's true.
But they've struggled. They lost 2-1 to Syracuse in a bit of a defensive standoff. They lost to UConn in a rather tough 4-1 beatdown, and now they're taking on the number 2 team in the country. So they've shown in past seasons, they shown last season that they have the potential to beat tough, highly ranked teams. They defeated Syracuse, actually, when they were number 1 in the country, when they were ranked really high. So they have the potential to beat really high-ranked teams. It's just a question of whether or not they can go out and whether they can play their game to the best of their abilities and go out and do it.
Yeah, if they perform like they have been and like the team that they really are, I think they can beat Maryland. I think they're one of the best teams in the country, and I think we've seen that. So that's a great matchup to really define them as a team. Moving on to something a little less positive, a somber topic here at UMass Sports Weekly. We want to touch on the UMass football game where more points were scored than people showed up. Vanderbilt beat UMass this week, 24-7. And I got to make a comment on the people that were there because as an SEC team in Vanderbilt, they must have walked into that stadium and said, "What are we doing here?" There was not a soul there. It's just kind of embarrassing. But we take any positives out of that?
Well, I think there were a little more than 24 people at the stadium, at the very least for the press coverage,
31.
Considering it was on ESPN News and all that. I think there were at least a little more than 24, Casey. At least if you were able to observe that, you were there.
I said total points. It was 31. So
all right.
I gave him.
Okay. But anyway, certainly another disappointing loss for the Minutemen against Vanderbilt. But there were, again, a few positives. It's hard to, keep throwing these tiny positives in there when UMass keeps getting beat down by these superior teams. But they're in a rebuilding phase, so you have to take positives where you can get them, I suppose. A.J. Doyle had another solid performance for where the team is at. He completed 20 out of 28 passes, 133 yards, and he threw a touchdown. And what I really liked was the team had its longest scoring drive of the season. Drove 75 yards down for a touchdown. The longest touchdown drive this team has had so far has been 54 yards, which really isn't the longest touchdown drive when you think about it. And I think with this game, they showed they can actually drive down the field and score when, on occasion. So that was a good sign. The defense, through the first 3 quarters, looked pretty good. They held Vanderbilt to 10 points through the first 3 quarters. Fourth quarter, the wheels sort of came off, and they gave up 2 additional touchdowns, which resulted in the final score, obviously. And unfortunately, the rest really there's not much good to look at. The rushing attack was atrocious for UMass. Couldn't even amount to 100 total yards. And despite 5 different rushers, including the 2 quarterbacks that played, and averaged 3.2 yards per carry. Stacey Bedell, who's supposed to be stepping up and becoming the number 1 running back, averaged 2.4 yards per carry on the day, only managing 5 carries, so that didn't look good. One positive note was the return of tight end Rob Blanchflower. He had a pretty good game. I think he finished with 7 receptions on the day, so he had a pretty good game, so he could be helpful to the offense going forward. on the passing attack, so that was good to see. A bit of a scare during the game as A.J. Doyle had to leave the game due to an injury, but he returned, so he wasn't gone for the entire game, so that looks good going forward. But, going forward, there's only so much good you can say about this team after it keeps only scoring a single touchdown.
Yeah, you're not going to win a game scoring one touchdown, and not going to win a game scoring 0 touchdowns. So that's really where it comes in. They need to start. The defense played like a D1 team. They faced Vanderbilt. They stood up to Vanderbilt, but the offense just isn't there. We're seeing some bright spots from Doyle. I think I like him in the offense. He's moving a little more, not getting as many turnovers. So we'll see how it plays out. They still got some time. It's still a learning process, Yeah. Now, another package you saw earlier tonight was in the men's soccer game. Again, we thank you for that. Great coverage. Unfortunately, the coverage has not been fantastic. They are currently winless. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, winless.
Yeah, they have one tie, but no wins.
Oh, they got the tie. So give them
the first
that.
game of the season, they got a tie, and since it's all been adding to the losing column since.
So they're not completely defeated. They're not a defeated team. They have that tie there.
Yeah.
That's good.
Winless, but not tieless.
We'll take the tie. So why don't you give us a little summary of what we've been seeing from this team, which hasn't been much?
Yeah, well, the story of the men's soccer team is really just a story of missed opportunity after missed opportunity. I mean, the team is getting shots off. They're setting themselves up for opportunities to score. I mean, in a few of their losses, in a few of their more recent losses, they've actually outshot some of their opponents. The problem is, a lot of these shots are missing the net. Not a lot of these shots are on goal. And their shot on goal percentage, which is, how many of their shots are actually shots on goal, is about 35%. So about 35% of the shots they take are actually shots that could go in. On the opposing side, about 52% of their opponent's shots are actually headed for the net. So that just gives you a bit of a comparison. And when you look at that particular statistic, it's not as surprising to see that the opponents are getting more goals than UMass, and it's not as surprising to see that the Minutemen have only 3 goals throughout the season. And
it's mathematical.
Yeah, that's mathematical there. And when you hear the fact that the team has a total of 3 goals throughout a season that I think is 7 or 8 games in so far, when they have less goals than they have games, it's soccer, but still 3 goals.
Making goalies look
7
good.
Or 8. It does make the opposing goalies look pretty good. Which is too bad because, redshirt freshman goalkeeper Nick Ruiz has been making a great effort. He's been making plenty of saves for the team. And he's been doing a pretty good job defensively. But the offense is giving him absolutely no support, and you're seeing so many shutout losses, one after another, and it's just building up for the team.
Yeah,
you saw the interview with Coach Sam Koch. There's just some kind of force field around the net that's keeping them from scoring.
They're all vexed out there. Well, it's a heavy role to put on a goaltender to come out and play like that, but Ruiz has been stepping up. So there's a bright spot there. We find the bright spots within these athletics. Yeah. Now, moving on to the Minute Women, as you mentioned a little bit earlier. Similar start to them in the soccer department. 0-3, not looking very good. But since then, they've really changed. What do you attribute this turnaround to?
Yeah, well, like you said, they've been turning it around. They're starting to show signs of life. Their current record, I believe, is about 3-5-1. I would say the turnaround is mainly on freshman goalkeeper Danielle Krasinski. Through those first 3 games, she had no more than 2 saves in each of those games. But since they 1-1 tie against Providence in that 4th game where she had 8 saves, she's had no less than 4 saves. So she's really stepped up in goal. And the offense has done pretty good throughout that time, but mainly it's been on the defensive side. Krasinski has really found her place in net for the Minute Women and has really turned the season around for the team. I think that's been the real key for the Minute Women's turnaround this season.
Well, let's hope they can keep this turnaround going and take this all the way to the end, be one of the top teams in the country. We'll see how it plays out. JMS, always appreciate your coverage of the college sports. And thank you at home for joining us. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Sports Weekly. Also, check us out on Facebook at UMass Sports Weekly. Give us a like, see some of our content, and get in touch with us. Thanks for joining us another week, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.